good to go.
Okay. Cool. So, go ahead.
I'm Dan Mull. I run a design collaborative out of Philadelphia called SuperFriendly. SuperFriendly is sort of a distributed team, but it's more run around the Hollywood model, or which I call the SuperFriend model, which is that I'm the only employee, but for every project I build a custom team for that project, and then after the project everybody goes their separate ways into the night.
Cool. And do these teams look similar? I mean, do they have the same kind of components in terms of representative skills and things like that?
Generally, yes, although they sort of scale up and down for projects. So there's some projects where the team is as small as one person or two people, and the largest team that we built for our project is 16 people.
Wow.
So we found the sweet spots around like 4 to 5 or 4 to 6. So generally on those 4 to 6 projects, they're usually web redesigns, and the makeup are pretty similar.
Yeah. And the clients, are they varied?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done stuff from installations and retail installations to website redesigns to strategy engagements. The beauty of the model is it sort of scales up and down as it needs to and allows us to take on very different types of projects.
So you're not specifically focused on web design, you could do just about anything?
Yeah, basically. I think if I was focused on one thing, it'd be a little bit boring. So it allows me the opportunity to sort of do more than that.
Cool. So now, if you wouldn't mind just giving us like the 2-second version of how you got to where you are now from maybe, being a kid and...
Yeah, absolutely. So as a kid, I used to draw a lot. I was actually interested in graphic design, but I didn't realize that it was a thing. So I went to school for animation, realized that I wasn't good at that, discovered graphic design, and then ended up getting a bunch of really great internships and jobs working for some great people and learning from some great bosses. That learning allowed me to start my own company.
Cool. So at what point did you realize you're the leader?
That's a great question. I've always felt like my best skill was being the second person in charge. So not always the leader, but the person who supported the leader most. SuperFriendly was actually the first experiment in me saying, well, what happens if I'm the head honcho? Is that a total disaster, or is that going to be something that I can do? And I find that I actually relish both roles, so I try to seek out both those opportunities. Sometimes I like being kind of the supporting cast for somebody else. Other times I like running the show.
So a lot of the descriptions in terms of roles and the way you describe SuperFriendly, you use that Hollywood model.
Mm-hmm.
Explain how that became like the inspiration for what you do.
Yeah, totally. So I've been really fortunate to work at some really great agencies and work with a lot of great people. One thing that I found that was sort of lacking there was sometimes I would work with a group of people that weren't always the experts at that thing. So sometimes we would work on, say, a kid's site, and I would love to work with an information architect that had expertise in kids sites. Mm-hmm. But we don't always have that person on staff, and I think that's one of the flaws of sort of co-located or permanent employee models. So when I was thinking about it, how I could differentiate my company when I started it, I was thinking, well, how could I collect the best group of people but don't have to put them on payroll? That kind of led me to the idea of a Hollywood model in the way that a director staffs a film. They don't always use the same actors. They just try to get the actors that are right for the roles. I've heard of a couple people running companies that way, and I figured it would be a good thing to try out. So far, so good.
Nice. So the model's fairly new, but have you always thought about yourself doing this kind of thing?
No, never. I mean, probably a year before I started my company was the only time that I started thinking about it. I've always loved being an employee, and again, I was really fortunate to have great bosses, so I never felt that I was lacking in that. Really, the motivation for me was when I had kids. I just wanted to stay home with my wife and kids a lot, and I thought it would be selfish to ask a company to let me do that. Because the places I work, the cultures just weren't really good for that, and it would have been really selfish of me to do that. So for me, it was a good time to sort of see if I could just at least work from home and spend more time with my family, and then figure out how to sustain myself and my family through that.
So your motivation's changed?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much does money motivate you?
A lot. I guess money for me is a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that really motivates me is how can I spend the most time with my wife and the kids. If I'm not making money, I can't do that because I'm constantly worried and my wife is worried. So to me, I'm very happy taking on really crappy but lucrative projects because it gives me runway to be able to actually do the things that I want to do. So I'm happy to take sort of short-term sacrifices in order to win in the long run.
Interesting. The process that you would recommend to a younger version of yourself in terms of how to get to where you are right now, where you've got the knowledge, got the insights, got the confidence, you're sitting in front of yourself, 20 years younger, what do you say to that person?
Well, I'm happy with my life now, so I wouldn't change too much, but I would sort of encourage some of the things that I did, but just to be a little bit stronger. So I was always kind of the weird employee that liked reading statements of works and, you know, operations manuals and things like that. So I probably encouraged myself to do more of that stuff. Without that stuff and without having, you know, the bosses that I had that encouraged me to do those things and were fine with it, I wouldn't be able to run a company. And I was really fortunate to be able to learn from other people's mistakes and their failures. And so I like to observe those things and put those into practice. So I think I would suggest to my younger self, you know, do as much of that as you can and soak that up, because it's good training for running a company.
So it sounds like the craft of running an organization is as attractive to you as the creative parts of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I look at it as a design process. It's a design problem. It's a thing that needs to be well intentioned. It's a thing that needs to be well crafted. And that's the same exact skill set that I apply to, you know, web design or interaction design. Running a company to me is no different. It's just kind of pivoting that design problem.
Would you say that your leadership style is like the model in that you are the director or are you the executive producer, or is that not a good way to describe how you style your leadership?
Yeah, definitely the projects that I pull together, I'm the director. I think that the model scales really well in that I can bring on as many teams as I want to. I can create as many teams as I want to. But the reason that I don't do that, the reason I don't have 100 teams running at once is that when I stretch too thin, that it affects my directing ability. So I try to limit the amount of projects that I'm working on to only the things that I can be directly involved in so that I can keep that focus on those projects. So I find that the thread in all SuperFriendly projects is me. And if I can't uphold that quality of those projects, then I'm not really going to have a good portfolio of work. I'm not going to be able to sell that work. So since I have to be that thread, I try to hold that thing to be as consistent as possible.
Do you think that the people that end up working for you would describe you in the same way, or do they have maybe a different perception of who you are?
That's a really tough question. I think the people that I enjoy working with most would, and I think the people that it hasn't really worked out with, I don't think that they would. I think...
What would they describe some of the words, like adjectives that they might use to describe those that work with you well?
I'm pretty direct on the stuff that I like to do and the things that the visions that I have for projects. And I'm not shy in making those things known, but I try to leave as much openness for the person that I'm hiring to bring their thing to the table, their skill to the table. So I find my job as more of a curator is just how can I find the people that are doing the best work and how can I create enough space for them to do that work uninhibited. So some people, you know, want to be involved in the business side, some people just want to come in front of Photoshop, and for both of those people, my job is to help them do their jobs more effectively. Nice. So I'm not sure what they would say, but I hope that they would say those
we'll
things.
Ask them.
Okay.
What do you think the future looks like for you, Dan? Not necessarily the company, but and maybe it is the company.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how you identify yourself. But there's probably a vision that you have of what the future looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm very, very passionate about teaching. I find I get the most fulfillment out of that, and SuperFriendly is a small company. It's one person, one employee. I have no plans to grow larger than one employee, but the thing that I'm doing right now is I run an apprenticeship program. So I do a 9-month apprenticeship with people that have appreciation for design and development but don't know anything about it, and I try to get them from 0 to 60 in 9 months. The future for me, you know, if all goes well, is to run a full-time apprenticeship and do that, and maybe fork the business. SuperFriendly, the agency, the collaborative, is its own business, and SuperFriendly, the apprenticeship, SuperFriendly Academy or whatever, becomes its own business as well.
Interesting. Do you have any physical space at all?
I do. So when I moved back to Philly from Brooklyn, I moved into an old church that we renovated. So my wife and my kids and I live upstairs, and underneath my house I have a 3,000 square foot studio that I work out of. And I have right now I have 3 apprentices, and so we all work out of the studio.
Nice, very cool. What are the skills that you lack that you still need to fill in terms of, you know, a complete view of yourself?
I take very calculated risks. I think the skill that I lack most is bravery. That's been really hard to work on for me because I've always taken risks that I know have no consequence. I've never really taken a risk that I didn't know was going to pan out. So I think that's a thing that I could definitely work on and learn more about.
Interesting. I think Maya Angelou said courage is the only skill you need because everything else follows from that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So not everything goes easily. Not everything works well. You've made a couple of mistakes along the way. Can you, remind yourself, remind us what mistakes have taught you the best lessons?
Yeah. I got the first year was great. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have any revenue goals. My revenue goals are basically don't go into debt, don't have to get a full-time job. And first year was really great, better than expected, blew revenue out the door, 10 times as much as I expected to be making. I got a big head from that year two. And year two, while revenue was really good, we had two awful projects. I thought I was doing really well. I thought basically, anybody can come to us. They already value the work. They already value what I'm going to do. So everything's going to go PG. The projects went so poorly that two projects canceled at the same time. One project almost ended in litigation. And it was just, I chalked that up to me not having my eyes wide open and going into those projects, just sort of assuming, this will work out fine, where there are clearly warning signs in it. So I think sometimes, I've been fortunate to have a lot of success, and when I do have a lot of success, that it blinds me, and I'm not very self-aware in those times. I'm the most self-aware when I'm the least successful, I think, and so it's weird because I sort of, to be self-aware, I have to not be successful, and when I am, I think that's a thing that I'm working on as well.
Interesting. What are the skills that you're looking for in other people that come and work for you, whether it's chemistry or hard skills, soft skills?
I think I like to work with people that want to learn stuff. So I find that even though I hire people that are really good at what they do, if they don't come into the project thinking that they're going to learn something or not expecting to learn something and just expecting like I'm going to execute and get out, I find that it's not interesting. I mean, we do good work, I think, and those projects end up good, but it's not interesting if we're not learning something together. So the people that I really love working with most are the people that have no idea how to do the thing that we're going to do and then figure it out along the way. And I'm very attracted to those people that come in and are just like, I have no idea how to go about this, but I'm very confident in my own learning abilities that by the end of it, I will be an expert. I'm very drawn to those kind of people.
Nice. What do you do to keep the life-work balance thing, the stress out of your life?
Yeah, when I first started SuperFriendly and working from home, I thought, well, I'm going to have a very strict schedule. I'm going to work 9 to 5, 9 o'clock I'm going to clock in, no earlier, 5 o'clock I'm going to clock out, no later. And that just didn't work for me. Work just bled in and out of that, and I would do things like my kids would come downstairs and want to play, and I would just be angry at them because this was work time and I have to get work done. So what I do now is kind of the opposite, where I work a really long day with really long breaks in between. So I get up at 5 a.m.